Next up in line, we have a panel. The panel will be moderated by Alan Wojnowski, who's head of research at Staking Rewards. And the topic is about validator pricing strategies. So here we really go down to the fees. Our guests and panelists are JK, ex-Stakefish, Yuri, co-founder of Friends Validators, and Florian Liss, co-founder at Staking Facilities. Give a big round of applause. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So here today with Yuri, JK, and Florian, we will be discussing a bit about, what are fees when you stake with someone, what happens behind closed doors, what's the current methodology, and what can be improved there. I just wanted to start off, Yuri, if you can give us a little bit of a walkthrough. If I delegate with someone, what are the fees that I'm actually being charged?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the invite. And to kickstart the discussion a little bit, how fees generally work, I know there is a lot of confusion around it quite often. So let's say you stake 10 atoms, let's say with us, because we charge 5% commission, so it's pretty easy to calculate. Then let's say the APR of atom is at 10%. Then you would make one atom per year, and we would basically charge 5% of that. So you would basically pay 5% of the one atom you made. And we charge this because we basically offer a service, obviously. So we run the infrastructure, we have to run service and so on. So this is how we essentially make money.
All right, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. What's one of the biggest misconceptions? So, if someone looks at any of the UX, and I see the commission rate, what mistakes do people make, and how do validators potentially game it?
Oh yeah, this is maybe a good time to, we talked about this a bit, but the concept I wanted to introduce always was effective rate. Well, I should start off by saying I'm JK, I am ex-Stakefish, but going back to what I was going to say is that if you look at across all the UX right now, especially MintScan as an example for all the Cosmos chains, you see all the validators and you see all the commissions they charge, but the commissions will vary from anywhere from 5%, 10%, But the thing is, these commissions don't translate across chains because each of the chain has different inflation schedule, has different reward rates, and so you could be charging both 10% commissions on Cosmos, Hub and Evmos, but Evmos has a reward rate of 150%. So the 10% commission is significantly different, and it has a very different meaning. So at least what I always like to do is use the concept of the effective rate, which is multiplying the reward rate of that time times the commission. And so this should give you a good idea of, based on how much assets are staked, how much of that are we earning as a validator. And so, just wanted to put that concept out there, and I could say roughly, 100 basis points and below is roughly where all the commissions effective rates are today.
All right, nice, thanks. And so obviously commission rates might differ between different networks, but do they also differ between different users? If I'm an institution or whale, is anything happening behind closed doors? Is everything on-chain fully transparent? Florian?
Obviously there's backroom deals going on in the space. Validators and node operators are very much incentivized to climb up the ranks just to gain more visibility, but also depending on the network, it doesn't actually cost you more money to run the infrastructure if there's $1 million on a node or $1 billion. So basically everything you can earn with that node raises your return ratio. So obviously larger providers do these deals with institutionals and whales to basically get them to delegate to them and also to build a long-term business relationship with them, right? So you don't want someone to delegate only an Atom. You want those institutions to delegate Atom, Sol, Ethereum, and all these tokens to you.
Yeah, just one thing to add is just that, the power is in the actual token holders, right? Validators, to some extent have power on chain, but still at the end of the day, we have power on chain thanks to what the delegators are staking with us. And so that's why these sort of private dealings do happen, to try to negotiate and try to meet large token holders halfway to incentivize them to establish this long working relationship.
All right, yeah, thanks. And in terms of like how it actually works, is it mostly institutions come to you and they want to actually invest indirectly through delegating to you in a way and ask for discounts, or do you have a sales team that reaches out to institutions and kind of tries to bring delegations to you?
Yeah, I could go. So we do both, BD, like that just naturally, organically comes to us. Thankfully, we have a great marketing team that really put our brand and reputation out there. But also we do reach out to, known people that will have these large tokens. We don't have a fully dedicated sales team like I think some other operators do. Would have loved to have some of those operators up in this panel, but unfortunately they're not up here. But yeah, we're one of the ones that don't really have a fully dedicated sales team. Yeah.
Maybe to add to that, I mean, JK, you said it before that the power is with the delegators. So actually expecting them to come to you to discuss pricing is not really realistic, right? They are the ones who have the power. So you need to make the pot juicy for them, not the other way around.
And what's the deal with 0% commission validators? I mean, you do all these deals with these institutions, but why can't institutions just go to them? Is their business model to basically just underprice everyone else and just grow, or how does it affect you?
I mean, I'm not too familiar with the institutional side of things here, but what I can say, from our perspective, as we are a very community-oriented validator, is if you start your validator business right now and you try to compete with all the big players, aka Chorus One, or also staking rewards here, and you just have your small infrastructure and you just got started, it's very, very tricky for you to stay in the active set. I mean, we all have large teams that work a lot, and so you have to give them stakers kind of an incentive to stake with you. So I think the reason why a lot of them are doing this in the beginning is it should be considered as an investment, like kind of a marketing or go-to-market investment, I would say. So, but obviously at the end of the day, they all have to make money, so they will increase it at some point.
Yeah, and I guess, JK, you mentioned to me that there's some discussions on some networks about some sort of minimum commission rate. Would you like to elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so some of the networks like Evmos, I think, is a prime example where all the validators have a minimum commission rate that they can't set, literally in protocol, they cannot set anything below 5% on Evmos, as an example. A few other networks have started to do this sort of as well, where they enforce a minimum commission rate. Interestingly, some foundations even soft enforce this by telling validators that they will not delegate if the commissions is below a certain point. Just a personal take on the minimum commission, it's a horrible idea. It really does not help with anything at all at the end of the day. The problem is that minimum commission just incentivizes validators then to talk with more delegators behind the scenes. And really, you lose that transparency on actually how the pricing is working, how competitive fees should work. And so, so I'll stop there, but yeah.
I mean, and that's something only the large validators can do, right? You're not starting as a community validator and going to a large institutional or offering them below 5%. You have no power to do that. It's very dangerous because it actually helps the large players grow even more. So I would say it's a horrible idea in that regard as well.
And also we're so young in this in the sector. I think Miko's presentation at the very beginning showed how early we still are, and now to enforce somewhat regulations that are very, very hard to control does also not make any sense to me.
Yeah, I'm a free market proponent. The moment you disrupt that, you create all sorts of insane incentives, and the externalities are just it's going to get out of hand at one point.
Yeah. All right, and obviously you've got the other side of the spectrum as well, with validators charging 100% commission. What's the kind of mentality behind it? Yeah, I guess Florian.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I guess there's different reasons why you would charge 100% on your validator. Depends on the network. So, for example, in Polkadot, every validator earns the same amount of tokens, which means the more tokens are staked on your validator, the less rewards you get per token. So, if you're like a large token holder who has plenty enough to basically get into the set and stay in the lower ranks of validators, he's earning more per token than the ones that get delegations. So it might be just like stopping people from like diluting your rewards. It might also be the reason that you cheat customers. Like there is a lot of misconception about what commission means, and like we talked about it before, that there are some community members who think, oh, there's 100% commission, so I'm getting 100% of the rewards. There's other reasons, like legal reasons. You don't want to have delegators because it might be that you're then a custodial to them, depending on the network. So yeah, there's different reasons, and I don't think it hurts too much to have some of them. Obviously, also depending on the network, if there's a limited set of validators, it can be really dangerous because then again, you're closing out these small players that actually the community would like to have.
On that note, because it's wonderful that you mentioned this example of the 100%, that there's this misconception. I think here we again what we discussed in the very beginning of this discussion, that also the UX has to improve. So we are always arguing about all the centralized exchanges. What I find so lovely about Kraken is whenever you do something, like you start staking or if you start swapping, they explain everything to you what you are like doing here. And yeah. There's nothing what get explained to you when using Kepler, for example. It's your money will be untouchable for 14 or 21 days. That's it. So yeah, I think that's what we have to solve, like on a UX space.
So what would you guys say is, let's say you're delegating your own tokens and you're not allowed to delegate to yourself. What kind of commission rate range would you say is acceptable for you?
I would say like when I'm like delegating in networks where staking facilities is not active, what I usually do is I don't really care about the commission. I rather look for like node operators or validators that I know and trust, and like community validators that offer some service. Like we also run in Solana, for example, with Solana Beach, which is our block explorer. We run a validator with 20% commission fee, and we see people delegating to that because they appreciate the value it gives to the network and to them as a user. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm usually staking with, I have to be honest, with Stakefish, Chorus One, and all of these, but also looking at like people who are active in the communities, who help out people on Discord. And it's nice to be in a position where we can just do that. And basically, being the large one doesn't mean we don't represent these values and that we can't make a difference ourselves.
So then the best pricing strategy is actually build reputation, build trust, and just charge a little bit more than it costs you to run your validators and all your side business, right? Value added extras and so on.
Well, I mean, I do want to. I don't want to say that though. Like, you know, it's yes, but at the same time, like in reality and in practice, doesn't really happen. Because then also, it's like we wouldn't see exchanges being the top, you know, validators. You know, realistically, people do value convenience. People do value, paying no fees. So these will always constantly be a factor in everyone's decision making. And so I think staking facilities is doing a good job of this. Of course, Friends as well. But like, you know, it's about showing delegators the value proposition. That is an immense amount of education that needs to go in there. But you know, while I want to say that that's like the biggest decision factor for most stake, but I'm quite sure it's not. It will always converge to how low of a fee can you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just talking about myself there. I absolutely agree that the average user, they go to Minscan, they look at the top 10 of validators, they pick one with like low commission fees. And if you ask them, well, why did you choose them? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I like the logo, or like the commission fee was low. It's not about it's so hard for them also to just differentiate, right? Like there is not that much information out there why you should not delegate to Coinbase or why you should delegate to like a community validator. And that again plays into what you said before with education of actually like end users.
And this might be a good point to make then, which is why the stakingrewards.com's verified provider is an interesting step towards that. So just want to put give a shout out right there. But again, like the tool, Rated is also a great example of where there's a lot of transparency into like how exactly the validators are doing. There's I think a lot of tools that are being built out to help with this to some extent. Because like again, like we're talking about commissions, but they're also the flip side of it is some validators might not just be performant at all. Like they might just be horrible. So you're getting charged 0%, but like your reward rate is like, pretty devastating. So I think there's still a lot of exploration that needs to happen on that tooling and data transparency front. Yeah.
And we saw that with like the Hetzner outage now, like throwing out all these Solana validators, and suddenly 20% of the network is gone, right? There's a reason why some of these validators can charge very low fees. It's because they save on like things that the user doesn't see, right? So absolutely agree with you there.
And I think you said at the beginning, Florian, that it doesn't really matter if you have $1 million delegated or $1 billion. You pay the same at the end of the day for your service. But quite often I see the top validators actually being the ones with the highest commission rate. Is that because they have already the marketing and the trust built up, or do you think like at what point would it make sense for the highest ones to just be like, okay, actually we're just going to reduce it, give back to the users, or is there no benefit for it?
So in my opinion, it's good that some of the larger ones have higher fees, because if they would be like dumping the fees and you see them like the best validators, they would be pricing out the smaller ones who start up, who have like a lot of like upfront investment costs and like who need to first build their community and their trust. So I actually think it's good that some of them have higher fees. As for us, I can speak like we're usually not the lowest fee validator. We're trying to be like a little bit more premium. And basically why we do that is we argue that the services that we provide actually add value to these networks and to our customers by, for example, not running in the cloud, building everything in like with bare metal servers like Luga Nodes just talked about in their talk right before this. And so, yeah, in my opinion, charging that extra comes from having higher costs because of doing that as well.
Yeah, and also I think people are also happy to pay the extra dollars. Like I had actually the same thing when I staked my Kava. I staked them with Chorus One, even though their rate was a little bit higher. But for me, the reason why I did it was I know the team, and they have a large team. They are like very easily reachable. I know they are safe, so this is like kind of an insurance that you also buy with this. And I also just had the discussion, if I pay now 4% on almost nothing or 5% on almost nothing, I mean, yeah.
I think public fee is deceiving. I do think currently privately the fees are contracting really heavily right now, to the extent where I think there's like almost close to zero margins at this point. And like, you could easily calculate out the revenue portion of all of this because it's all on chain, right? Like you could easily calculate out, fees and all the reward rates across all the networks, and then work back from there, thinking like, okay, how much could the private fees be? But what I'm seeing is at least it's like contracting really heavily. I think this is a testament to the fact that maybe we have an oversupply of validators. And yeah, maybe it just takes some time either for the networks to grow big enough or for us to have less validators basically that are running professionally. Yeah, a hot take. I think everyone here will survive, but just saying. I think that's just personal opinion.
I can definitely see your point here, but I think here again, I think all of these discussions are a little bit too early for me. Like in a year or 2 years from now, or like at least after the bear market, happy to talk about this again. But now I want to leave like the room as large as possible to do experiments.
I would add to like what you said that like we saw it with like Sika Validator at the beginning of Cosmos, right? They were the ones, basically the first ones I knew who like said like, okay, we start with 0% and like maybe in 3 or maybe in 6 months we'll change it to something more reasonable. And they got a lot of delegations, and delegations are sticky. So if you have a delegation, the chance that someone goes away is much lower than it should be. I mean, we shut down our Tezos validator like months ago now, and there's still like hundreds of thousands of dollars on there just because people don't delegate away. And so I think that's one part of that. And the other one is there is also another reason why right now acquiring stake on your validator is super important. We see all these like big companies raising money and like trying to build the teams to basically win the whole staking market. And if you try to sell your company, you can tell like, well, there's $2 billion in assets staked on my nodes. It's much better of a selling point than looking at like the actual reward. So I would say like as long as we're in a growth stage and not a revenue stage, this is just the way the market works.
To the point where you said like that the first commissions are very sticky, I completely agree with that. But I think maybe that's also hot take. Maybe it's also the protocol's fault in some point, because if we look at FMOS, if we look at Osmosis, they all started with a super high inflation. The early adopters were there. They just randomly delegated the money to a couple of validators, and now the inflation is getting lower, 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 lower. And I think maybe we should also considering this design if we want to ensure a decentralized protocol from the very beginning.
And yeah, it makes sense. But so, well, adjusting your reward rates by like based on inflation, right? So, would you also consider to adjust your commission if we start entering a bull market again? Is that a consideration you'd also make or not?
Well, I mean, it didn't happen on the past cycle, so I think it's very difficult to keep changing the commissions. It's very, very difficult to do that. It's hard to increase, like, you know. I think the most jarring one was like Everstake on Tezos increasing their commissions, which was like shocking to me. But because like, you know, many of the delegators are very passive, right? They stake and then they just don't care about it for like a year or so. Like imagine the surprise, like coming back to your stake, you know, you take out your cold wallet and you're like, oh, you know, let's reap my rewards, and then suddenly they find out they were paying 15% fees. I'm quite sure that was a pretty shocker for a lot of people. So I'd say like it doesn't matter about the market cycles. The commissions are very, very difficult to change. And consider this, for institution-facing validators, the moment you change the public fees, of course your clients are going to come knocking on your doors saying, well, it seems like times are good for you. What can we do about our own fees now?
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, we came out of a bull market and basically ran into despair where like prices dropped by 90 or more %. And to be quite frank, like validators earn their money in native tokens. So like the revenue has dropped pretty much the same rate, like the price has dropped. So right now, a lot of validators, especially like the large ones who like build up their teams in the bull market and all of that, like they're running at a loss for sure right now. Which means I don't think they can even lower the rewards right now, because basically you try to survive until the next bull market where then you reap the fruits of what you're doing right now. So as JK said, like you can't just increase fees, especially not in a bull market. So lowering them right now is, I think, a very dangerous game.
Yeah, and I think to conclude what we just mentioned here is that pricing strategy also comes with a business plan. And I was also surprised that so many validators were like keeping super bullish, even though we saw that the Fed might be doing something in regards of the interest rates. But for example, we had friends, we started like in the bull market, and we have like a very, very small paycheck. And I think this is like what it's all about, that you have your strategy in order to also survive in a bear market. And I've seen crazy things that larger validators have a super high paycheck, and I mean, okay, then you have to deal with that.
And do you guys, or do many validators hedge during the bull market? So they're basically selling, 1 or 2 year out expiries and options or futures? Is that quite common?
I would say so. We started it actually not too long ago. We did it in a slight way, but I know from friends of the business that this is quite common. But on the other hand, just because that no one is worried about the big validators, the thing is they also earned a lot of money in a bull market, and we as a validator, we also have certain opportunities here and there to invest in a project early, to build with them. So our opportunities come also with a cost.
At least what I've seen on average, no. The best only sort of hedging or risk-off strategy is just selling your rewards as they come in, like the miners do. But treasury management is not something that's being actively explored enough in the Validator space. There's definitely a few projects that are sort of circling around and trying to see what they can do. But one of the problems is that the assets that we touch and we have on our balance sheet are long tail assets, and good luck trying to get good option pricing, good futures pricing on any of those, because they're just so new and exotic that no one is willing to provide competitive fees on any of these. So I'd say give it 1 or 2 more cycles before we see proper hedging and proper treasury management discipline coming in. But at least right now, I don't think that's the top priority being discussed.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I think there's just not enough tools to do that efficiently right now, right? We see them being built as of now, but during most of the bull market, these tools have not been openly available. You could do some of these hedges, but I think the strategy of the past few months or years actually for most of the validators I know has been to liquidate into cash and build up reserves there. And then still keeping the upside of your tokens as much as possible because we all know there's going to be another cycle, and then this will pay off. But I would say it will get more and more depending on the tools that we see. It's the same with insurance, right? I don't think there's that many insured validators right now, just because there's not enough tools to actually get insurance at an effective rate.
Things will definitely get more fun when the validators are starting to actively sell, because then we're talking about the inflation and everything. Good luck. Now as a protocol, you need to make sure you have discipline on how you set the inflation rate, because otherwise that's all selling pressure coming into the market.
All right, yeah, thanks. It's all very interesting, and I just wanted to open up the stage for any questions from the audience. So I think Marian's just getting the microphone quickly. Any questions? Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm wondering how you technically manage different commission rates. Do you run separate nodes, or do you have some, I don't know, contracts, or how do you manage different commission rates for different customers if you have them? Any tools maybe, or just manual work?
So we have a staking agreement that we share with all our institutional clients, which basically offers we call it a rebound, basically, which means we'll pay you periodically a rebate on your tokens. We don't do that on chain. Obviously, as we said, these are backroom talks. They're not on chain visible. They're not publicly known. I think we also don't want talking about that. I don't think we want to be our price is known publicly, because then we'll have to have the discussions with our retail customers about why do you offer so low rates to them and so high rates to us.
Yeah, I apologize for bringing it up, but I really wanted to get this out there for people to at least have some understanding that these things do exist and happen. So, but yeah, to your question, so all these contracts, because they're off-chain, needs to be managed legally. So these are meat-based legal contracts, and so you could imagine this just like any other legal contract dealings that you do, in the Web2 space. Like, if you sign up for, Slack or something, like they tend to send you a terms of service that you need to sign and everything. So like it's the same sort of thing. In terms of like internal tracking, for some networks we have, more automated way of just like tracking everything, but for most it's good old Excel. Yeah.
Oh, we are not doing this at all, so I'm out here.
Yeah, but just to what you said, JK, is like I think it's better to actually be transparent, even if people don't know the extent of it, but at least knowing that it's there. I think it actually builds the trust as well. So I'm a retail delegator. You're openly saying that you do these kind of deals. I'm like, okay, actually that builds the trust level rather than makes me, dislike you more.
Yeah, and this then goes back to some of the more contentious policies that we're talking about in some networks about these minimum commissions. I'm hoping like this fact, discovery helps them understand why a lot of big validators are against this minimum commission, because it doesn't do any favors for anyone.
All right, yeah, thanks. We've got time for one more question potentially.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for the talk. Really interesting. I was wondering, where do you see down the road kind of the role that centralized exchanges running their validators? What role should they play in the chain, in the governance? And do you see a problem with them having such a big stake? If you look at chains like Kava, for example, where like 3 of the biggest validators are just the exchanges, what risk does that pose, and how do you think that should be long-term kind of dealt with? Thanks.
So at least the way I think about it is, it looks concerning right now. But also at the same time, I think exchanges are extremely, they've survived all sorts of cycles, right? They're really smart people. And it's just taking them some time to really understand and build out a team within these exchanges to fully internalize how they should approach validators. Like as an example, like, if you go back even a year or two, like staking was not a priority for any of the exchanges. Like they don't care. Like they either delegated or they work with just an outside provider. That's it. That was the end of story. But I think increasingly exchanges are putting dedicated teams into trying to understand how they could participate. So what we'll see is, as community members, I think it's important to cry out like, oh, this is bad, exchanges, what are you doing? And eventually this sort of feedback is going to loop into their decision making. I believe we're already sort of seeing this where exchanges are very open to discussing and trying to put out thought pieces on how they could help decentralize the network. And I think this is happening more actively, I think, on the Ethereum end, but we'll see this flowing into other networks as well. So I'm concerned, yes, I'm with you on the concern right now, but I'm optimistic about the future because, again, there are participants in this industry, and they need to play by the rules of everyone.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I mean, when we hear the term centralized exchange in DeFi, we always think, oh, they are the evil ones. But as you mentioned, I mean, also Binance has an interest that DeFi survives, that this industry survives, that they can offer staking products. So it's not like that they are sitting there and discussing like evil things or so. So I think they are also like kind of beneficial for this industry.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. I think we all learned a lot. And any other questions anyone might have, I think these guys will be available in the networking room for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.